What grade would you assign this coin? Just take it in the way you normally would. Don't break it apart yet. Don't start hunting for problems. Just look at it as a coin sitting in front of you. At first glance, this feels like a pretty solid piece. Nothing here is jumping out aggressively. There's no single hit that dominates the surface or the focal area. No obvious damage that forces you to pull the grade down. So your brain naturally settles into that comfortable middle ground where you're thinking, well, this is probably fine, probably somewhere in that low to mid state range. And that first impression is exactly where this coin starts to work against you. So if you actually had to put a number on it right now, before we touch anything, before we move in any closer, before we change the angle, where are you landing? Are you thinking this sits around a mint state 63? Does it feel like a mint state 64? Are you tempted to maybe push it higher because nothing is really stopping you yet? And whatever that number is, lock it in. Don't adjust it as we go. Because what usually happens with coins like this is that people will slowly walk their grade down as they start noticing things. But the real mistake already happened in that first impression where the coin felt cleaner than it actually is. Let me show you. Now, stay right here at this distance and just let your eye move naturally across the coin. You come across the portrait, moving through the cheek into the fields. Nothing is really stopping you in a hard way. There's chatter in the cheek, but it's not overwhelming. It's broken up, it's spread out, doesn't consolidate into one dominant distraction. The fields have activity, but again, it's not really concentrated. It's not aggressive. So everything kind of blends together into this kind of average-looking surface. And that's where the brain starts doing something subtle. It starts smoothing out the noise. It starts compressing all of these little small interruptions into something that feels manageable, something that feels acceptable. And that's why this coin reads stronger than it actually is when you're just looking at it casually. All right, now slow yourself down a little bit and follow your eye more deliberately. As you come across the cheek, you start to notice that your eye doesn't really move cleanly. It doesn't glide across the surface. It's kind of stepping. There's a small interruption here. Not deep, not dramatic, but enough to catch you. And then as you move again, there's another one, and then another. None of these on their own feel big or important, which is why they're easy to ignore. But together, they create a pattern where your eye never fully settles. You're constantly adjusting, constantly refocusing, and that creates a kind of subtle instability in how the coin is perceived. It's not that the coin is heavily marked. It's that the surface never resolves into something smooth. It never gives your eye a clean path across the focal area. All right, now move out of the cheek and into the surrounding fields, because this is where you would expect the surface to open up and give you some relief. And it doesn't fully do that. The transitions aren't all clean. The luster doesn't carry evenly from one area to the next. And instead of getting a smooth flow, you get these small breaks where the surface loses continuity for just a moment before picking it back up again. And again, none of this is strong enough to really call out individually, but collectively, it keeps your eye moving and working. And that constant effort is what starts to define the grade, even though it's very easy to overlook when you're not actively looking for it. Okay, now we're going to check out the reverse, because this is where a lot of people start correcting themselves in the wrong direction. At first glance, the reserve looks cleaner. The fields appear to be more open. There's less visible chatter, and your brain immediately reacts to that by thinking the coin is stronger overall. But if you follow your eye the same way, you start to notice that even though it's smoother, it still doesn't fully settle. The luster doesn't carry cleanly across the entire surface. There are still breaks where the surface loses that continuity, and you feel your eye hesitate just enough that it never fully relaxes. So now you've got one side that pulls you more and one side that pulls you less, but neither side really actually resolves into a clean, uninterrupted surface. Now, watch this, okay? As we push in further, you can finally see what your eye has been reacting to this whole time. These aren't just random marks. They're positioned in a way that interrupts the surface where it matters most, especially in the focal areas where your attention naturally goes first. They break the continuity of the luster. They disrupt the flow of the surface. And once your eye catches those interruptions, it keeps coming back to them, whether you want it to or not. And that's the key difference between a coin that looks fine and a coin that actually grades higher. It's not the presence of marks. It's how those marks interact with the eye as your eye moves across the surface. So when you take a step back and you put all of that together, both sides, obverse and reverse, how the surface behaves, how your eye reacts to it, this coin really doesn't have the stability to move much higher. It doesn't have the surface control you need for a mint state 65. It doesn't even sit comfortably in the upper end of mint state 64. So what you're left with is a coin that lands right at the 64 level. And even there, it's relying on the fact that none of the issues are individually strong enough to push it lower. Now, compare that to this solid mint state 64, where you still have marks. You still have activity, but the surface holds together. Your eye moves across it more cleanly. You're not getting pulled back into the same areas. The interruptions are either less frequent or less impactful. That stability is what separates coins within the same grade range. And it's also what separates coins that stay in that range from coins that move beyond it. It's not about how many marks you can find on the coin, because you can always find something if you look closely enough. What matters is whether those marks change the way your eye experiences the surface. Most of what you're seeing here doesn't matter because your eye moves past it without interruption. But the moment something stops you, even briefly, even very subtly, that's what defines the grade. And the more often that happens, the more unstable the surface becomes, and the harder it becomes for that coin to move up in grade. Okay, so I'd love to know in the comments what grade you felt this 83 Carson City would achieve. If you graded this higher than where I landed, you probably weren't looking at the wrong things. You were just giving equal weight to the things that don't carry equal impact. And that's the trap with coins like this. They don't look bad enough to push you down, but they don't behave well enough to move up. And that space in between is where most people get caught. So, what grade did you come up with? My estimation of this coin is it's probably a mint state 63. It could hit mint state 64. I don't think that's reasonable, however, just because I don't think the coin is quite consistent enough to make that. Obviously, a solid 62, a good 63, I think, is where this one lands. But that's kind of the challenge of grading. You've got to determine what you feel that range will be. And when you're able to compare against a coin like this, which received a mint state 64, and then look at a coin like this, it's hard to know exactly where it's going to come down. But you have to look at the overall surface. You can't just look at one mark or one set of marks. The entire surface of both sides is what will be evaluated and where you need to look to ensure you're accurately grading your coins. If you'd be interested in learning more about what the graders actually see and are looking for, you should check out my video.